Do you consider yourself a high achiever? Smart, driven, highly successful? I am so excited to have you. My name is Julia Arndt and I'm the host of the Stress Podcast. I will help you develop your stress resilience the same way you've developed your workplace superpowers. Learn peak performance tools to thrive at work and in your personal life. Let's get started. Hi everyone and welcome back to the Stress Podcast. I am super excited to sit here this morning with my cup of coffee. It is 7 a.m. in California and I wanted to make sure to record a couple of podcast episodes for you before I'm going offline for a couple of weeks. And I'm super excited to sit here this morning with Catherine Gagnon. Hi Catherine, how are you today?
Hi, Julia. I'm doing much better. How are you today?
I'm doing good. Thank you. My day, like I said, has just started, and I'm super excited to sit here with you today.
Oh, likewise. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. This is super exciting.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. So the first three really simple questions that I always ask my podcast guests are just to kind of get us started and warmed up. And the questions are, where are you located? What time is it? And what did you do this morning to start your day?
That's easy questions. So I'm located in Davenport, Florida. That's just outside of Orlando. It's 10 o'clock, just a little after 10 in the morning. And this morning I did what I usually do in the morning. I do some yoga, just some self-care. I usually do a little meditation. I didn't have time this morning. Just getting ready for a really fun conversation with you.
Wonderful. Well, I would love you to start with maybe just a quick introduction about who you are and what you've been up to over the last couple of years. And you can totally choose if, maybe your journey takes you back 10 years where everything kind of you feel like started, or 5 years, or whatever feels right for you. So really excited to hear a little bit more about you.
Awesome. Well, thanks for that pre-frame, because it's always like, okay, how far do I go, right?
Uh-huh.
How long do we have? So I'm Catherine Gagnon, and I'm a former nurse practitioner. So I left the medical field in 2017 to do what I'm doing now, which is health and life coaching and emotional alchemy. And I remember being a nurse practitioner, loving my colleagues, my patients, but really truly feeling like it was not enough. Like there was something more that I wanted to do that I couldn't bring in the context of the structure of Western medicine. And it was the mind-body connection. In Western medicine, for some reason, there was a separation between mind and body. And I remember becoming a nurse back in 2004 when I got out of nursing school, and I was working ER in Montreal, and, going, wow. I realized quickly that medicine had separated the mind and the body. And I was thinking, even in ER, I was thinking, they don't go one without the other. So I have so many examples of talking to people where just reconnecting their mind, their emotions with their body was already starting a healing process, like really amazing stuff. So back in my nurse practitioner office in 2015, 16, 17, I remember thinking to myself, there's got to be more to this. And I want to bring my whole experience, and I want to be able to bring a much more holistic experience of healing for people. And one thing one thing led to the next. I was, at the time, didn't know it, but I fell sick with Lyme disease. And that became a quest to save my own life. That was back in 2016. Mm-hmm. And in 2017, I saw that part of my healing was to quit my nurse practitioner job. It was the most interesting thing, Julia. It's like my soul was coming to let me know, like, okay, now is time. Like, you gotta quit this nurse practitioner job. And it's like I look at my soul going, are you crazy? like I've studied so much for this position, and I've got colleagues and patients. I can't just let them down. And my soul was like, yep, you're gonna, your flame is gonna go out if you continue doing this within that structure. It's not for you. And so I sort of argued for 4 months with my soul, and then left my nurse practitioner job. And the most incredible thing happened. I was already doing pretty well with a protocol that I constructed for myself with plants, medicinal plants for Lyme disease, and supplements, changed diet and all that. But when I left my job, my recovery just accelerated. I had never seen that. It was just like, wow, okay. So here it was again, bringing back mind, body together, and the body was accelerating its healing. So I've developed an expertise to help people with Lyme disease recover their health and their life without losing their time and money. And the bigger sort of umbrella expertise that I love working with is energy. I love working with people who are tired of feeling tired and worried, and who want to recover, their full vitality, their motivation. They want to feel passionate about what they're doing. They want to feel like they've got energy at the end of the day to do the things that's really important to them. So I was always someone of high energy, but let me tell you, with Lyme disease, oh my goodness, it's like I had units of energy that I needed to invest really carefully. It's like energy is like money. It's like I had a little bit of money every day. I didn't know how much I was going to get, and whoop, I would run out really quickly if I did something more than usual. And then I've learned to work with that. So we can talk about the energy equation that I put together, but I'm just fascinated about how quickly the body can recover energy when you give it the proper conditions. So
amazing. And I have a million questions now. First of all, a really maybe simple one. You obviously, as you introduced yourself, you said your name a little bit more in a French accent, and you said you're from Montreal. Is that where you grew up or where you were born?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amazing. And then you said you're splitting your time between the US and Canada. How does that work exactly?
Yeah, my husband is American and I'm Canadian. Okay. So when we split our times between Florida and Quebec, according to the weather, because we're both hang glider pilots. So we like to be in places where we can fly. And we love to kayak, we love to ski, we love to bike. So these are all the activities that make us feel alive and feel good, and just make life so much more exciting. And it's funny because when we cross borders, we tell each other what we visit each other in each other's country. So it's nice. Interesting. Yeah,
that's awesome. And so, question for the Lyme disease. I've heard about Lyme disease many times, but I'm not really sure what it is or how it shows. And I know people that have had Lyme disease in the past. And then, I also wonder, can you fully recover from it? Can you tell us a little bit more about the disease itself?
Yes, it's a complex illness. I have a whole hour-and-a-half conference on this. If it's free on YouTube if you'd like to post the link.
Amazing.
For people.
Yes, that would be awesome.
But in short, it's mainly an illness that's transmitted by a bite of a tick, and it's a disease that goes multisystemic, meaning it goes everywhere in the body, and it causes symptoms in all different systems of the body. And what I tell people, especially if they don't know that it's Lyme, maybe they've been diagnosed with chronic fatigue syndrome, maybe they've had fibromyalgia diagnosis. But there's a lot of medical hypotheses that are saying that fibromyalgia and maybe chronic fatigue syndrome might be Lyme disease that's undiagnosed. What I tell people is when you've had symptoms in all different systems, meaning you got headaches, you're dizzy, you got the skin rash, you got pain, you've got difficulty digesting, your eyes are weird, you're peeing all the time, like symptoms that seem really not related to each other, that you've been to multiple doctors, maybe you've tried different treatments, and nobody can really tell you what it is. The treatments are not really working. And if it's been a while and it's provoking anxiety and even depression, or doctors are telling you, well, it might be time to go on antidepressants, that's a typical clinical picture of Lyme disease when it's gone chronic, meaning it's been more than 3 months since the bite of a tick, which is the main vector for transmission. And so it's a multi-systemic illness that has multiple etiology, so multiple causes. It's got bacteria, viruses, parasites, amongst other things. So it's got to be approached from all different angles. So like I said, in the conference, people can watch it.
Okay.
A lot of people who've watched it and then went to their doctors, they wrote to me afterwards telling me, Catherine, I knew more than my doctor about this disease. So thank you. So yeah.
Amazing.
It's
very interesting. And so did you know that you had a tick bite? Because I guess that's probably the problem that a lot of people have, that they don't really know.
Totally. If that's one of the problems. So that was 2016. It took me 8 months to find the diagnosis of Lyme disease, because in Western medicine, even my colleagues didn't know what it was, and I had to sort of really dig and study and find the diagnosis myself. So when I found that it was Lyme, it took me 8 months. I was able to trace it back to when I actually acquired it, which was 16 years prior. In 2000, when I was traveling in Australia, I was 20 years old, and I had a tick bite. I didn't know what it was back then. I was not even a nurse. I was just backpacking the world, learning life, And I traced it back to all the primary infection, all the signs and symptoms of the primary infection. I had them in 2000. I just didn't know what it was. And then it was you would say by chance or serendipitously, that a few weeks or maybe a few months after that bite, it's hard for me to remember that time frame, I traveled to Thailand, and the medication to prevent malaria, which we take as a prophylaxis in medicine, we say we prophylax as a prevention, is doxycycline. And so I had doxycycline, which is the treatment for Lyme disease when it's acute. But when it's acute for Lyme, you take doxycycline twice a day. For prevention of malaria, you take it once a day. And so back when I was 20 and I went to Thailand, it's like I got half treated. So it put it like dormant. But in hindsight, I had signs and symptoms sort of creeping in all throughout my 20s and early 30s. And so something was cooking under the surface that I didn't know. And then in 2016, when it all came out, and then I found out it was Lyme, then I was able to treat it successfully. And you asked a really good question: do we fully recover from that illness? There are two schools of thoughts. The first school of thought is that you never fully recover. You sort of learn to live with the symptoms, and you sort of make a life with it. The other school of thought is you just go for full eradication. You go after all of the co-infections, all of the possible form of the illness. Some of them can be in cyst or biofilms, the microorganisms they're trying to hide from the immune system. And so I'm the second school of thought. And the way that I did it, I tested afterwards and it showed full eradication. So
wow.
Very grateful for that.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah. I think my grandmom had Lyme's disease, I remember her kind of talking about it, but like when she had it was when she was like 50, which is like 40 years ago. And so there was obviously not a lot of knowledge, especially I feel like in Eastern Germany at the time. But yeah, it's a kind of an interesting topic that kind of reminds me, I kind of want to ask her again about this. But anyway, so you said that happened in 2016, and then you kind of slowly transitioned from your classical, traditional education and job into what you're doing today. And you were saying you were battling with yourself for 4 months, going through that process of making that decision. Can you tell us a little bit more about the thoughts that you had? And, I guess you touched a little bit upon it, but I would love to hear a little bit more about what goes through your mind. And, I think people that are listening to this podcast probably have these thoughts as well, right? I think we constantly talk about and think about, is this the right thing that I'm doing? Does it really fully make me happy? But how can I make this transition into something maybe so different to what I'm doing right now?
Absolutely. And when we talk about change, because this changing career is one of life's major transitions. So the only humans who likes change is it's a baby with a wet diaper. Change is uncomfortable for just about everybody, even if the change is going to be an improvement, there's still things that you're leaving behind. So for me, it was a major decision because obviously as a nurse practitioner, I mean, I studied the field. I invested years of my life doing a master's degree. I had patients, I had colleagues. The biggest thing in my mind was letting people down. I was like, I'm letting people down if I'm doing this. Of course, there was the sort of, the fear of, am I going to have enough to live? Can I make a living being an entrepreneur, being a coach? And at the time in Quebec, this health coaching was really not known. I mean, there was business coaches, but health coaching was just, it was not a thing in existence. And so I was like, okay, can I make a living doing this? Because with my job, whether I had patients showing up or not, I mean, I was paid my salary, right? And I had my social benefits and the, the paid vacation and the this and the that. So it was a lot at stake. It was a lot to lose for some uncertain gain. And so the 4 months of arguing with my soul was really weighing the pros and cons and pros and cons and pros and cons. And, it's exhausting just to go back and forth through that. And at that time, I had just started my active Lyme disease protocol. I didn't even know if I was going to be able to heal, to work full time in my business. It was really following this huge intuition, this huge soul guidance. It's hard to explain, Julia, but it's like something was pushing me. There's this, I don't know if you've seen this cartoon. It's this person on the edge of a cliff, and then there's like a big hand ready to flick that person off the cliff. And this is like, the universe wants you to fly. And then just at the bottom of the cliff, there's another hand, the universe got your back, sort of thing.
I feel like I've seen that before. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I'm a hang glider pilot. I know what it's like to launch off of cliffs and fly, but yet that was something that was so invested because it meant my livelihood. It meant my friends, my colleagues, my parents. What were they gonna think?
Yeah.
And was I going to be successful? Was I going to be able to sustain being an entrepreneur, making this thing work? Would I find clients? And so
probably status as well in a way, right? And
yes,
identity.
Totally identity. Because when we ask, so who are you? What do you do? We tie our identity with what we do, right? And so being in the medical field, there's a certain sense of prestige there. Health coach, what is that? I even, just to push the matter, I even got the orders of nurses who called me into their office. And I was like, oh, what do they want? What did I do wrong? But they just could not understand why I would leave a nurse practitioner job to do something that they never heard about. You know, they were like, was there something wrong with the physician, the collaborating physician? I'm like, no, they were awesome. I love my colleagues. Just, did you not like the job? I was like, no, it's not that. And they were like, well, what was it? I said, well, in the end, it came to me no longer resonating with the medical paradigm. I wanted to do more than patch symptoms. I wanted to go to root cause. I wanted to help people change for the better, not just cope and learn to live with something that's going to be there all their life. No. I don't believe in that. I believe that we can do like a total makeover and live a life. I call that the life 2.0, and not settle for less. And so it was a little bit of a head scratcher for them, but
interesting. And had you heard of life and or like life and health coaching before? Like, how did you make that decision, right? Because you were saying it wasn't really known at the time. So how did you know that's what you wanted to do next?
You know, I had never heard about, I mean, life coaching, I had started to hear about this. And in a way, it was not so much the modality, but it was about what I could do for the people. But I remember in 2016, when I was coming home from work and I was thinking, is this it? Like, is this really what I'm going to do for the rest of my life? Because I'm not digging this. Something is missing. And I was writing prescriptions for health conditions that could be prevented, that could be reversed with the proper lifestyle and mindset habit. And I knew this. So it's like I asked the universe, show me what's next. And it took about 4 days.
Wow.
And I saw an ad on Facebook, become a health coach. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so I just sort of inquired what was it, and at the time that was the Health Coach Institute. And I was, I spoke with the Clarity Coach. I was still not sure because it was, an investment, another course, and I had studied a lot already. And it's funny how intuition or life signs work. And I just sort of left it open. I was like, okay, universe, show me what's next. How can I help people in a way that I know will bring all of my life experiences and will bring such a high level experience for them that they'll never go back to what was. That was sort of the question. And I was following groups of nurse practitioners on LinkedIn, and I was receiving sort of notification in my email. And one morning I get an email that says nurse practitioner working from home. And I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to work from home. I don't want to commute to work. The time I would commute to work, I want to exercise. This is lost time for me. I don't want to commute. I want to work from home. And that was back before COVID and telemedicine and all that.
I feel like we have a lot of parallels in our kind of career
yes.
and what we wanted to do in our life. So it's very interesting for me to hear that.
That's so cool. Anyway, so the nurse practitioner had sort of a similar path as me. And then she had the sort of same frustrations as me. And in order to bring more holistic experience to people, she became a health coach. And I was like, bam, that's it. Thank you, universe. That's the sign I was waiting for. I called back the Health Coach Institute, gave them my credit card, and I enrolled in the health coach program. So, but it turns out it was much more than health coaching. And because health is life, but it's really transformational coaching. And I furthered my studies afterwards. I worked with I worked really closely, studied under some world-renowned people in the world of personal development, and still, finished another program recently. It's just, there's no limits to how we can improve our lives. But yeah, that's how it came about.
Very cool. And, one more, I have so many questions, but I would love to kind of understand, because, you do talk about like the universe, and, maybe there are some people listening that are not super connected yet to maybe, kind of maybe the higher power, whatever, they call it, if it's God or the universe or the world or whatever. Was that always something that you've been feeling connected to, or was that something that kind of developed over the course of your lifetime?
That's a great question. I always had what's called intuition. And when I was younger, I'm a very sensitive person. I feel people, I feel rooms, environments, trees, and I've always been like that. And I think my parents, bless their heart, they were doing the best they could with a very sensitive child. They wanted to protect me. And so many times I would tell them some intuitions or some things that I was sensing, and they were like, no, 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 honey, it's not that. And so it sort of shut down my intuition. It shut down my confidence in my own sort of inner guidance until in my 20s, I went traveling the world. I just wanted to be everywhere but at home. I wanted to travel. I wanted to meet people. And that's when it came back. I remember walking one day in Bangkok and I had lost my map. And I was like, well, I just kept hearing, turn right. Okay, I turn right. Turn left. All right, I turn left. Go talk to this person. All right, I go talk to this person. Bless you. And then it would lead me to the right person, right timing, right places, synchronicities of life. So that's when I learned to retrust that. But I have to say that when I became sick with Lyme, it's almost like it opened up a deeper level of inner guidance, of you got to trust this inner voice. Otherwise, you're going down the pit, because nobody else could help me. The answers were not in conventional medicine. My colleagues were trying to help me, but they didn't have answers. So I really had to listen to me. And then when came the arguing with my soul about leaving my nurse practitioner job, that was like upper level inner guidance that it's almost like I had no choice but to follow. And because I chose to follow and to trust, and mind you, my treatments for Lyme were super expensive. I stopped counting at $75,000 what it cost me to regain my life. And so I exhausted all of my savings since the time I had started to work as a nurse. All of my paychecks were going to that. And then I was leaving my nurse practitioner job to be an entrepreneur, to have a business. I mean, who does that?
Yeah.
So it was really higher level guidance. And you know what? I'm so glad I listened to it. And now I know that it's valid.
Yeah. Well, it's almost like it was good that that happened, because as you were saying, it actually opened you up to listen better to what you really needed. So it was kind of a blessing in disguise in a way.
Yeah, and that's what I tell people. Sometimes we think that calamities are falling on our head, like an illness or a divorce or being laid off of a job, or some major life transitions. And I like to tell them, no, this is the best gift of your life in disguise. Right now, when you're sick or when you're in the middle of the whatever is happening, the gift doesn't look like a gift. It stinks, it's ugly, it's not well wrapped, it's but when you realize that life happens for you, not to you, you step out of the victim role of why me, why did this happen to me, and you go into the being the captain of your ship and being like, you know what? Okay, maybe I've caused this because I needed this to improve my life. So now I'm going to be at the wheel, being responsible for my life. And for me, Lyme disease was the best gift I've ever had in my entire life.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, you were talking you were already kind of hinting at a couple of different things that I want to go into. So, we're obviously talking about transitions, right? And about like big life changes, things that are happening, that kind of maybe bring you in a completely new direction of, your life, maybe physically and from a location perspective, or from what you're doing or who you're with. You talked about two things that I'm very curious for you to talk a little bit more about. You talked about emotional alchemy as you introduced yourself. Would love to hear a little bit more what that is. Let's maybe start with that before I talk about all the other things.
Okay. Yes. Well, emotions are big for people. A lot of people have difficulty living their emotions. They'll either stuff them down or numb the emotions with distraction, media, food, alcohol, whatever it is. And we're not judging. I'm not judging it. It's just people do what they need to do to cope because they don't like the discomfort of the emotion. And emotions have a huge impact on the physical body, on illnesses, on your mood, on obviously your mood, but on your energy level. And so I've noticed that with the realm of emotions, especially the heavy emotions, like heavy metals like lead, when we learn, so when I teach my clients to learn how to harness the power of the emotion. Emotion is energy in motion. It's got a lot of energy. Think about anger. It's got a lot of charge, right? And when people don't channel anger properly, it is either going to hurt themselves or hurt other people or hurt the furniture around them, right? And so emotional alchemy is transforming that heavy emotion, just like the process of alchemy of you transform heavy metal like lead into gold, into light, right? And so taking heavy emotions and going through a process of transformation, of alchemy, so that that emotion becomes, it's no longer what's holding you back, but it becomes what propels you forward. You harness the power of that energy. It becomes your North Star, your light. It becomes your gold, your treasure. Yeah. That which used to be heavy now makes you light. So that's what emotional alchemy is. And that has a lot of impact on people's physical energy. They recover faster from illnesses. They have healthier relationships. They're more at peace with themselves. They're more clear about their next steps. If they have decisions to make, going through life transitions is much easier when you're a master, when you have emotional mastery. So, yeah.
Yeah. Very interesting. And so, as we were talking about this change and transitions, you also talked about energy, the energy equation, and also energy leaks. So, yes. The people that are listening to my podcast and that I work a lot with are people that have very high stress, right? They're in very high stress environments. They have a lot of pressure. They have a lot of competing priorities. And then obviously in all of that, they also experience change and they experience transitions, yes. Right? No matter if it is a reorg at the company or a new role, new responsibilities, a new manager, a new leader, or they experience obviously, going through a breakup or having to relocate physically, obviously just life is happening at the same time as they're also navigating this challenging work dynamic. So how can they better manage that in the future? Well, how do you approach that?
Yes. I think a lot of people are stressed and going through changes at the same time. So in a way, that's like a double whammy. Because any change, any transition, life transition, any change will require an input of energy. If you think about water that doesn't boil and you want to make it boil, you have to add energy to the system to make a change. So if somebody is starting out a process of change and they already don't have enough energy because they've been chronically stressed for a while, they're going to have to tap into reserves of energy that either they don't have, or it's going to leave less energy for the rest of their life, right? It's like if your credit cards are maxed and then something else comes in and you have to, a change that you have to pay something more, well, you're going to have to cut down into some essentials like food or toilet paper, who knows, right? So, it's always good to have energy in the bank. So energy is like money. I like to refer it to that. I love that. To have energy in savings, because you never know when you're going to need it. Life changes can be predictable, but most of them are unpredictable. I work with the energy equation, which is something that I created from my scientific mind. I'm a very spiritual person and a very scientific person. And for so many years, the polarity of this was just pulling me, sort of like Braveheart, like, but I've learned to reharmonize these two. But the energy equation is the outcome of how you generate energy. And this is how I work with people. I look at their life through the energy equation. How do you generate energy? Meaning, are you eating well for what your body needs? Are you sleeping well? Are you moving? The obvious things.
Mm-hmm.
And then you add to that how you're investing strategically your energy. So it's like money, right? You want to invest your energy in a way that you have a bigger ROI.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go have coffee with a friend, let's say you were a little bit down and then you come out of that encounter feeling so much energized, well, that was a great ROI, hopefully for your friend as well, right?
Yeah.
But if you invest your energy in something that drains you more than gives back to you, then that's not a strategic investment, right? So how you generate energy plus how you invest it strategically. So we look at that, and then we divide it by the energy leaks. And that's where my specialty is, because I can see, feel, and hear the energy leaks of people.
Mm-hmm.
And there's many examples of energy leaks, and I'll name a few, and I'm sure that you and your audience can relate to some of these energy leaks. Because when you start to plug these leaks, energy comes back in the system, because it's almost like magic. It's like, wow, where's this energy coming from? Well, it just stopped leaking from you. It's like if you stop some of the subscriptions to things that you no longer need, then you have more money in the bank account because it's not leaking. So some of the energy leaks, obviously any chronic stress, but the stress is the meaning that we give to situations.
Mm-hmm.
So perfectionism is a big energy leak. Comparing yourself with other people, big energy leak. Saying yes to something, to a project, to a person, but really, really when in your heart it says no. So not listening to your intuition, and then paying the price. That's an energy leak. Wearing a mask of, oh yeah, everything is going well. Yeah, I'm fine. But inside you're feeling alone. You're feeling like you're crumpling, like nobody understands you. You're feeling like on the edge of collapsing. That's a huge energy leak to maintain the mask, right? Pain in the body is a huge energy leak. Toxic relationships, if somebody deals with passive aggressiveness in the workplace, or people, narcissistic, not to put label on people, but we know some personalities are more difficult than others to deal with, and especially when they're in position of authority and power. Hiding secrets, holding your own truth. Let's say you're in a meeting and you have a point to say, but you're holding it back because you're afraid of not pleasing people. You're afraid of retaliation. You're afraid of this or that. This is a big energy leak. Not being able to tell your partner how you feel, your needs, your desires. These are all huge energy leaks that stems from our beliefs and our programming of what we think we should be and do in order to be loved, in order to stay safe, in order to belong to a group. So those are huge. I mean, there's more energy leaks, but I think
amazing examples. Yeah, great. I'm glad that you mentioned those. Okay, so we identify the energy leak, right? And now people are probably like, okay, how am I going to work on my perfectionism and on my, boundaries and all of these different things, right?
Yes. So any process of change or healing occurs in 3 steps. The first step is awareness. Awareness is always, you can't change what you don't know about, right? And so when you become aware of a pattern, or you become aware of an emotion, and it's a little bit annoying, but be grateful for it, because now you know what you're dealing with. And sometimes just being aware of something is enough to switch it around, if not completely, pretty fully. So awareness is the first step. And to dare looking into the thing that you don't want to look. Oftentimes people, they don't like to see the things they believe is their shortcomings or their faults or things like that. But no, that's where the gift is.
Mm-hmm.
So awareness with curiosity. And what curiosity does is it pushes away the judgment.
Mm-hmm. I just wanted to say
Judgment.
it kind of keeps it more positive than negative.
Absolutely, because judgment is a huge energy leak. It's like we're judging ourselves so much for the things that we think we're not doing right, and listen that. And judgment is preventing us from growing. It's preventing us from having awareness. So when you're just curious, you got the awareness, I'm curious. Mm-hmm. It's interesting that I chose to see this event as, this person saying this. It's interesting that I thought it was my fault. What makes me think it's my fault, right? It's awareness with curiosity, so that you question the automated meaning that you give to events. Mm-hmm. And already that's going to get you, quite far, just to do that consistently. Mm-hmm. So that's awareness with curiosity is the first step. The second step is transformation. And I mean, you work with people in the transformational world, I worked with people like that too. And I have my own coaches because
same,
they take me so much further. Mm-hmm. So the further I take myself, the further I can take people. So the process of transformation, I would say, find a good coach, find a good mentor, somebody that you resonate with that can guide you through a set of really true and proven sequences, and a modality that you resonate with that can help you transform the limiting belief, the programming. Like I take people back to the womb and to the places in their childhood where their brain was too young to make a decision about what was right or wrong, but yet they made that decision that, mom ignores me, that means I don't matter. And so the person just carries that belief, and beliefs are subconscious, and the subconscious mind impacts 95% of our actions. We have only 5% of willpower, and yet we're trying to live our life, will our life, and power through our life with 5% of willpower. Mm-hmm. So the transformational piece is so important to harness all of that subconscious presence that you're not aware of, and yet it's running the show of your life. And so that's the second step, transformation. Mm-hmm. And the third step is...
Can I interrupt you for 1 second on that?
Yeah.
Can transformation happen just on your own? Because I think, people are listening now and are like, oh, do I have the money, or can I invest in like a coach or a mentor or a psychologist maybe even, right?
Yes.
I think it's an important question.
Yeah, I think it's an important question, and a lot of people like to do things themselves. I'm one of them, Captain Same. Independent. Yeah. Yes. Just the process of awareness and curiosity. I think there are marvelous books also that can take you through journaling exercises that help you to identify, go back and identify the meaning of what you give to the event. So I come back to the meaning all the time because I have another equation, which is the sort of the meaning equation. How come we feel bad about ourselves in different situations? Mm-hmm. There's like a domino effect. So there's an event, and then based on our pair of lenses, which is dependent on how we were programmed in our childhood, we look at the event and we interpret the event according to our own programming. Mm-hmm. So and we give it meaning. And so the event happens, we give a certain meaning. Two people could look at the same event and have two different meanings. Mm-hmm. In fact, that's what happens. Mm-hmm. So event happens, we give it meaning. The meaning brings the emotion.
Mm-hmm.
The emotion brings the action or the behavior that we take. The behavior brings the result, which will reconfirm the meaning. So I like to give examples of this because it's a little bit abstract if people don't see it. So let's say you're in search of a soulmate and you see two people on a bench, a park bench, and they're kissing. Well, there could be multiple ways, but let's say, you've been losing hope of finding this person. So the meaning you're going to give to this event is, here are two lovers. This thing is going to be done in a year. Love doesn't exist, right? And so you give this meaning to this event. And so it gives you an emotion of even more despair, of maybe even frustration or depression. The behavior that you're going to adopt to compensate for that emotion, maybe you go and buy yourself an ice cream cone to kind of feel better. But then after you're done eating the ice cream cone, then you're thinking, well, now I'm going to get fat. Nobody's going to want me, which boom, reconfirms the meaning. The result that you have, I'm going to get fat. Obviously, it doesn't happen overnight, but with one ice cream cone, but it's going to reconfirm the meaning, which is going to re-trigger the cascade of emotion, of meaning, emotion, action, result, meaning, emotion, action, result. So if we go in and change the meaning, that's the transformational piece that I think in some with some good journaling exercises, you could go and transform the meaning. And if that's difficult, you can ask yourself, well, what else could it mean? Well, maybe it means that these two people are in love, and maybe because I'm coming onto them, that means it's getting closer to me. Maybe there's somebody out there who's searching for me. Oh, now I feel better. Now the next behavior might be, oh, maybe I'm going to go get a haircut and make myself look pretty. And then the result is, I love myself. I feel pretty. And then you change the meaning. So that could be what people can do. But it's in the meaning of event. And it's not easy to catch ourselves because it's so automated.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's what I think too. I think there's a lot you can do on your own, 100%.
Yes.
Right. And there are so many programs out there now as well that kind of help you through that process of journaling and, learning new things and creating that awareness. But, as you were saying, you have a lot of coaches. I have the same, and I did not always have that. I do think that as I'm doing my own coaching and I'm curious about, how to progress myself and how to develop myself, I've been hiring more people. And that kind of showed me, wow, there's so much more that I need to learn and that I want to learn. And I have these conversations. I actually am working with an energy healer as well. And I have been for like 2 years now. And and the type of questions he asks me, I've just never been asked before. And I never asked myself these questions either. And so it's just such a different perspective to gain from working with different people.
Absolutely. Yeah, we can do a lot on our own, but it's up to a certain point. And I'm like you, coaching just makes me better. Like you say, coaches ask questions that I've even never asked myself, these questions. And unless you ask the question, how are you going to get access to that information that's deeply seated within you? Right?
Yeah. Awesome. Cool. So anyway, I interrupted you. So that was step number 2, was the transformational process. And then the third one?
The third one is wholeness. And so it's a process of becoming whole. I truly believe that nobody is broken or nobody needs fixing. And if I look at the ancient wisdom of, let's say, Ayurveda, I'm right now studying to be a practitioner of Siddha Veda, which sort of stems from Ayurveda, also doing a PhD in natural medicine. I really resonate with those ancient wisdom of bringing things back into balance, back into wholeness, harmony. And so that's, to me, the sort of indication that you've come home on this one issue, right? So I see that even throughout the day, there are many, many different little processes of awareness, transformation, wholeness, awareness, transformation, wholeness. Some of these processes can last weeks, months, years. Some of them can last minutes, but it's, like our own cells are always turning over, right? Some cells die every 2 days and they replace every 2 days. Some of them die every 3 months, like our red blood cells, and they're replaced every 3 months. Every 7 years, we replace all of the cells in our body, including all the organs. And so there's always a turnover. But you will think about when, let's say you've had a conflict with somebody, and then you worked out the internal things and the meanings and the things that you wanted to say, and then you found the courage to go speak with that person and to really speak from a true place of authenticity, of a place of empowerment without disempowering the other person. And then you were able to have a heartfelt conversation. And then you sort of both came to a place of, wholeness. That's what it feels like. That space of wholeness, of like, okay, it's like it came full circle. So that's the third step.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this was so interesting, and I'm so glad that we had you and that you talked us a little bit through kind of that process of change, because I think also so many of us fear change, right? We kind of are comfortable in the change, and I love how you kind of turned it around and said, this really difficult thing in my life was the best thing that ever happened to me in hindsight, right? I think sometimes a little bit harder to see in the moment. And I think people that are listening can relate to that as they're looking back at their lives, thinking about changes and big transformations that happened. In the retrospect, it's always easier to say, oh yeah, that was actually a really good thing. And I think one of the things that have helped me a lot over the last couple of years in particular was to trust that in the past, that's what always happened. So even though I don't really see the meaning yet of what's happening to me right now, I trust that it's also something that brings me to something better and something bigger, that I could have maybe even ever imagined I would experience.
Exactly. Yes. A life transition is an invitation to up-level your life, to go to 2.0. You use the chaos of change to your advantage, and trust that there's something much better on the other side of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Catherine, maybe actually one more question. Is there any books that you recommend that maybe helped you through transformation or through change?
So many. So many.
What comes top of mind to you?
The Biology of Belief, Bruce Lipton, anything by Joe Dispenza. You Are the Placebo. If I go back,
Joe Dispenza, and I actually, when you were talking about the meaning equation, I was thinking about him and about, I think he calls it the energy reality, or not the energy, the reality loop, when he has kind of like the experience and the feelings and emotions and thoughts that kind of re-trigger kind of that cycle.
Yeah.
I knew it. Yeah, Joe Dispenza, really, really big into him too.
Yeah, that's awesome. One of my mentor, she wrote a book called Supreme Influence, and it's about using the power of communication to really any aspect of your life. So her name is Nirka. That's a really good book. I mean, wow, I've got so many books. I'm trying to go through my library in my mind.
List. Yeah,
The Mental List, Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl. Very good book. Back when I was like about 15 years old, that's when I started to read personal development books.
Wow.
And I recently reread some of the books that sort of got me.
There's another book that wants to be mentioned back in your bookshelf.
It's actually an oracle deck of The Secret Language of Light, Transmission from Your Soul. There you go. But some of the earlier books that I read, and I reread recently, was the Celestine Prophecy from James Redfield. Siddhartha, which is the life of Siddhartha Gautama.
By Hermann Hesse?
Yes, Hermann Hesse, German.
Yeah.
And this other one that is, oh my gosh. I had it here and it just left. Oh, The Alchemist. The Alchemist.
Yes. Oh,
Paulo Coelho.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing book.
So these are just they're filled with gem. They're filled with amazing life lessons and gems for insights. And I reread them even recently, in recent years, and with the amount of personal growth and transformation that I've done, they take a different meaning because now I have access to even deeper wisdom within me. Yeah. And I've recently became interested in the gene keys system. It's a little bit like human design, but that's a fascinating journey. And I've been guiding people into the gene keys. And oh my goodness, this is, talk about going into the magic and the mystery of life and being a full participant. Just the better it gets, the better it gets.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Sounds so cool. Well, I'll ask you to send me maybe 2 or 3 of the things that you mentioned, 2 or 3 of the books that you mentioned, and I'm happy to connect them in the show notes so people can have easy access to them. And yeah, it was so wonderful to talk to you today, Catherine. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here with us. And I have another million questions for you. So hopefully maybe next year we can do another one. I know we haven't talked about hang gliding, which is one of your biggest passions. And curious to learn more about that as well. But today I would say let's wrap it up for today. Thank you so much for listening. And for those of you that are really connected with this message, maybe you know someone that's going through change at the moment and they're struggling a little bit, feel free to share this episode with them and help them through their journey and through their process as well to navigate these changing waters. So yeah, again, thank you so much, Catherine, for being here with us, and I hope to talk and see you soon.
Thank you so much for having me. This was amazing, Julia. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.